The night was quiet in the small town of Willow Creek, nestled deep within the rolling hills of Montana. The stars shone brightly above, scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Ethan Carter sat on the hood of his old pickup truck, staring up at the heavens while absent-mindedly turning a wrench in his hand. The cool breeze carried the faint scent of pine trees, and the only sounds were the distant hum of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves. It was peaceful, a rare moment of calm in an otherwise chaotic world. Ethan wasn't one for big dreams or grand ambitions. At 32 years old, he lived a simple life, fixing cars and tractors for the locals and spending most of his free time tinkering with whatever broken thing he could find. His garage was filled with odds and ends half-finished projects, spare parts, and tools that had seen better days. He didn't mind the solitude. It suited him just fine. Life in Willow Creek was predictable, and Ethan liked it that way. But tonight, something felt different. The air seemed charged, almost electric, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Ethan glanced at the television set inside his workshop, which flickered with images of talking heads and scrolling headlines. News channels were abuzz about strange lights appearing in the skies over major cities around the globe. Some claimed they were satellites malfunctioning. Others whispered about UFOs, but no one really knew what was going on. Ethan chuckled softly to himself. Aliens, he muttered under his breath. Yeah, right. As he leaned back against the windshield of his truck, a sudden flash lit up the horizon. It wasn't lightning, it moved too deliberately, too smoothly. A streak of silver sliced through the darkness, followed by another, then another. Dozens of glowing objects descended from the sky, their shapes sleek and otherworldly. They hovered silently above the mountains, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled off the hood of the truck, dropping the wrench in the process. What the hell? He whispered, shielding his eyes as the light grew brighter. The objects began to form a pattern, arranging themselves into a massive circular formation. It was impossible to look away. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to do anything, except stand there gawking like an idiot. But curiosity rooted him to the spot. Back in New York City, thousands of miles away, the scene was far less serene. The United Nations headquarters buzzed with activity as world leaders gathered in the General Assembly Hall. Scientists, military personnel, and diplomats filled the room, their faces pale with shock and confusion. On the giant screen at the front of the hall, live footage showed the same phenomenon unfolding worldwide. Cities like Tokyo, London, and Sydney reported sightings of the mysterious fleet, each ship larger than any skyscraper. The message came quickly after. The visitors wanted to speak. When the transmission finally crackled to life, the voice that emerged was neither male nor female, human nor machine. It resonated deeply, filling the room with an undeniable authority. Through a translator device hastily assembled by Earth's top scientists, the speaker introduced themselves as representatives of the Galactic Council, or the G Council, as they called themselves. They explained that they were a coalition of advanced civilizations spanning multiple galaxies, united by a shared goal of maintaining peace and order throughout the cosmos. And now they had arrived at Earth's doorstep. We come not as conquerors, but as observers, the voice stated. Your planet has reached a critical juncture in its development. We are here to determine whether you are ready to join us as equals or if your continued existence poses a threat to galactic stability. The statement sent ripples of fear and excitement through the crowd. For centuries, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now, faced with proof of extraterrestrial life, the reality was both thrilling and terrifying. Questions flew thick and fast. What did the council want? Why now? Were they truly peaceful, or was this some elaborate ruse? Among the dignitaries present were two figures who stood out even amidst the chaos. Princess Lyra and Princess Senna of Zanara, a distant planet known for its diplomatic prowess, represented the council's interests. Both women exuded an aura of grace and intelligence, their shimmering robes catching the light as they moved. Their presence commanded attention, and yet there was something enigmatic about them, a quiet intensity that suggested they held secrets far beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, back in Willow Creek, Ethan watched as news anchors scrambled to make sense of the unfolding events. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from friends and family, all asking the same question, "Did you see that?" He barely registered the messages. His mind raced with thoughts he couldn't quite put into words. This wasn't just some random event. It felt personal, as though the universe itself had shifted gears, setting something monumental into motion. Little did Ethan know his name would soon be on everyone's lips. Unbeknownst to him, the princesses had already begun their evaluation of Earth's potential candidates for leadership. Scanning countless profiles and analyzing data streams, they narrowed down their search until only one name remained: Ethan Carter. To the rest of the world, he was an unremarkable mechanic living in the middle of nowhere. But to Lyra and Senna, he was exactly what the galaxy needed: a blank slate, untouched by greed or ambition, with a heart pure enough to guide fractured worlds toward unity. For now, though, Ethan remained blissfully unaware of the road destiny had chosen for him. As he climbed back onto the hood of his truck, gazing once more at the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet, predictable life was about to change forever. The days following the arrival of the alien fleet passed in a blur for humanity. News outlets worked around the clock, broadcasting every detail they could gather about the Galactic Council and their intentions. Governments held emergency meetings, trying to prepare for whatever might come next. In small towns like Willow Creek, people gathered in cafes and parking lots, sharing theories and speculations. Some were excited, others terrified, but everyone agreed on one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan Carter tried to go about his usual routine, but it was impossible to ignore the weight of what had happened. The sight of those massive ships hovering above the mountains haunted him, replaying in his mind whenever he closed his eyes. He found himself staring at the sky more often than not, half expecting another flash of light or some kind of signal meant just for him. Of course, nothing came. Life in Willow Creek carried on as normal, or as close to normal as it could under the circumstances. Then, one morning, everything changed. A black SUV rolled into town, its tires kicking up dust as it sped down the main road. It stopped outside Ethan's garage, where he was busy replacing a carburetor on an old tractor. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their expressions unreadable. They approached him with purpose, their polished shoes crunching against the gravel driveway. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and straightened up, eyeing them warily. "Ethan Carter?" one of them asked, his voice clipped and professional. "That's me," Ethan replied, gripping the rag tightly. "What can I do for you?" "We're here on behalf of the U.S. government," the man continued. "We need you to come with us immediately." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Come with you? For what?" "There's no time to explain," the second man interjected. "This is a matter of national security. You'll be briefed en route." Before Ethan could protest, they ushered him into the back seat of the SUV. As the vehicle sped away, Ethan stared out the window, his mind racing. What could the government possibly want with him? He wasn't anyone special, just a mechanic from a tiny town nobody had ever heard of. Yet here he was, being whisked away like some kind of VIP. The drive took hours, during which Ethan peppered the men with questions, none of which they answered. Eventually, they arrived at a sprawling military base surrounded by high fences and armed guards. Inside, Ethan was led through a maze of hallways until he reached a large conference room. There, he was greeted by a group of officials seated around a long table. At the far end sat Claire Bennett, a young woman with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. She introduced herself as a diplomat assigned to assist him. "Mr. Carter," she began, her tone calm but firm, "you've been selected for something extraordinary. Representatives from the Galactic Council have chosen you to serve as their new leader." Ethan froze, certain he'd misheard her. There. Leader? What are you talking about? Claire explained that the Council sought someone impartial to unite various planets under a single banner. According to them, Earth's survival depended on this decision. When Ethan pressed for more details, she admitted that even she didn't fully understand why they picked him. All she knew was that two princesses from Zenara, Lyra, and Senna believed he was the right choice. This has to be a mistake, Ethan said, shaking his head. I'm nobody. Why would they choose me over someone smarter, stronger, better qualified? They didn't give us specifics, Claire admitted. But they made it clear that your selection isn't negotiable. If you refuse, there could be serious consequences for Earth and for you personally. Ethan sank into a chair, overwhelmed. This couldn't be real. How could anyone expect him, a simple mechanic, to lead entire planets? The idea was absurd, laughable, even. And yet, looking at the seriousness etched on Claire's face and the faces of the officials around him, he realized they weren't joking. Over the next few days, Ethan underwent a crash course in diplomacy, politics, and galactic history. Claire stayed by his side, patiently explaining concepts he struggled to grasp. She taught him about the Council's structure, the tensions between different species, and the delicate balance required to maintain peace. Despite his initial resistance, Ethan slowly began to see why the Council might value someone like him. His lack of experience in politics meant he had no hidden agendas, no ulterior motives. To them, he was a clean slate, a chance to start fresh. When the time came for Ethan to meet the Council, he felt anything but ready. Dressed in a suit borrowed from one of the officials, he boarded a spacecraft alongside Claire and several representatives from Earth's governments. The journey to the Council's flagship was surreal. Through the windows, Ethan gazed at the curve of the planet below, shrinking smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. For the first time in his life, he truly understood how vast the universe was and how insignificant he felt within it. Upon arriving, Ethan was escorted to a grand chamber filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some resembled humans, while others looked like creatures pulled straight from science fiction novels. At the center stood Lyra and Senna, their presence commanding immediate attention. As Ethan approached, flanked by nervous Earth delegates, the princesses regarded him with piercing eyes. "You have accepted our offer," Lyra said, her voice soft yet authoritative. "It wasn't a question. I guess so," Ethan stammered. "But I don't know if I'm the right person for this." Senna smiled faintly. "Your doubts are understandable, Ethan Carter, but trust us when we say you were chosen for a reason. Your humility, your compassion, these qualities make you uniquely suited to guide us forward." Her words offered little comfort, but Ethan nodded anyway. Refusing now seemed pointless. The Council had already decided. Besides, if accepting meant protecting Earth from potential harm, how could he say no? As the meeting progressed, Ethan learned more about the challenges ahead. Wars raged across the galaxy, fueled by greed and mistrust. Entire civilizations teetered on the brink of collapse, desperate for stability. The Council hoped Ethan could bridge divides and foster cooperation among rival factions. It was a monumental task, one that left him feeling both awestruck and terrified. By the time the session ended, Ethan's head spun with information. Back aboard the Earth delegation's ship, Claire placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You'll figure this out," she said. "One step at a time." The journey aboard the Galactic Council's flagship was unlike anything Ethan Carter had ever experienced. The ship was enormous, its corridors stretching endlessly in every direction. The walls glowed faintly with a soft, pulsating light that seemed alive, and the air carried a strange hum of sound so subtle it almost felt like part of his own thoughts. Ethan walked alongside Claire Bennett, who did her best to keep him grounded despite the overwhelming strangeness of their surroundings. Every step took them farther from Earth, and with each passing moment, Ethan felt the weight of his new role pressing down on him. As they moved through the ship, they passed beings of all kinds, some humanoid, others completely alien. Some floated above the ground, their translucent forms shimmering like water. Others clicked and chirped in languages Ethan couldn't begin to understand. Despite the diversity, there was an undeniable sense of order. No one rushed or shouted. Instead, everything unfolded with quiet precision, as if the entire ship operated according to some unspoken rhythm. Ethan couldn't help but feel out of place. His suit, borrowed and slightly too tight around the shoulders, made him stand out among the council members' flowing robes and metallic armor. He kept his hands shoved into his pockets, trying to look casual, but his knuckles were white from gripping the fabric. Claire noticed and gave him a reassuring smile. "You're doing fine," she whispered. "Just breathe." Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed her. How could anyone expect him to lead when he barely understood what was going on? Still, he forced himself to focus. If he was going to do this, he needed to at least try. Their first stop was a chamber designated for orientation. Inside, holographic displays hovered in the air, showing maps of star systems, diagrams of alien governments, and timelines of galactic history. A council representative, a tall, insect-like creature with iridescent wings, explained the basics of the council's structure. There were dozens of member species, each contributing resources, technology, or military power to maintain peace across the galaxy. But tensions were rising. Old rivalries threatened to boil over, and smaller planets fear being swallowed up by larger powers. The council hoped Ethan could act as a neutral figure, someone who could mediate disputes without favoring any one side. "It's a lot to take in," Claire admitted later, as they sat together in a small lounge area. The room was simple, with cushioned chairs and low lighting designed to mimic Earth's atmosphere. Ethan slumped in his seat, staring blankly at the wall. "I don't even know where to start," he said, running a hand through his hair. "These people are counting on me to fix problems I don't even understand. What if I make things worse?" Claire leaned forward, her expression serious but kind. "You won't. Not if you stay true to yourself. That's why they chose you, remember? You're not tied up in their politics. You don't have centuries of grudges or alliances clouding your judgment. All you have to do is listen to really hear what they're saying and then find a way to bring them together." Ethan sighed. It sounded simple when she put it that way, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Listening was one thing. Finding solutions was another entirely. Over the next few days, Ethan met more members of the council. Each encounter was different, ranging from formal introductions to heated debates about trade agreements and territorial disputes. Some representatives were welcoming, eager to share their cultures and customs. Others were cold and suspicious, clearly unhappy about a human being placed in such a position of authority. Ethan did his best to remain calm and open-minded, even when faced with hostility. One particularly tense meeting involved a reptilian ambassador named Rex, whose scales shimmered like emeralds under the chamber's lights. Rex spoke slowly, his voice deep and rumbling, as he outlined grievances against the neighboring species. According to him, the other planet had been encroaching on Xeneran territory, stealing resources and destabilizing the region. Ethan listened carefully, nodding occasionally to show he understood. When Rex finished, he turned to Ethan expectantly. "What will you do about this?" Rex demanded, his tail flicking impatiently. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't expected to be asked for decisions so soon. I need to hear both sides before I can say anything," he replied cautiously. "If I'm going to help, I have to understand everyone's perspective." Rex narrowed his slit-like eyes but said nothing. Ethan took that as a small victory. Throughout these interactions, Claire remained by his side, offering guidance whenever he faltered. She taught him how to read body language, even among species whose bodies looked nothing like his own, and how to phrase questions in ways that wouldn't offend. More importantly, she reminded him to trust his instincts. "You've got good judgment, Ethan," she told him one evening as they ate dinner in the lounge. The meal consisted of bland, nutrient-rich bars provided by the ship's kitchen. "Don't second-guess yourself so much," Sometimes, the simplest answers are the right ones. Her words stuck with him, and over time, Ethan began to grow more confident. You realize that while he might not have the knowledge or experience of the council members, he brought something else to the table: empathy. He genuinely cared about finding fair solutions, even if it meant taking extra time to think things through. Then came the day of his official presentation to the full council. The event was held in a massive auditorium, with rows of seats arranged in a spiral around a central platform. Representatives from every member species filled the room, their eyes fixed on Ethan as he stepped onto the stage. Lyra and Senna stood nearby, their presence both comforting and intimidating. Ethan cleared his throat, feeling the weight of countless gazes upon him. For a moment, he considered backing out, retreating to the safety of his old life in Willow Creek. But then he remembered Claire's advice: stay true to yourself. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, he began, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting in his stomach. I know I'm not what you might expect in a leader. I'm not powerful or wealthy or even particularly smart, but I believe in fairness. I believe in listening to people and working together to find common ground. And if you'll let me, I want to use those values to help bring peace to this galaxy. The room fell silent. Ethan braced himself for criticism, for laughter, for anything. Instead, a slow ripple of applause spread through the crowd. It started with Lyra and Senna, then grew until the entire chamber echoed with the sound. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. Maybe, just maybe, he could do this after. As the meeting adjourned, Claire approached him with a proud smile. See, she said, you're already proving them wrong. Ethan returned her smile, though doubt still lingered in the back of his mind. This was only the beginning, and he knew the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time since leaving Montana, he felt a spark of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. Ethan's first real test came sooner than he expected. After weeks of meetings and orientations aboard the Council's flagship, he was finally taken to Araxis, the capital planet of the Galactic Council. It was a world unlike anything had ever imagined. Towering crystalline structures reached high into the sky, their surfaces shimmering with colors that shifted depending on the angle of the light. The air smelled sweet, like blooming flowers mixed with something metallic. Strange vehicles zipped through the air, leaving trails of glowing energy in their wake. Everywhere Ethan looked, there were signs of advanced technology blended seamlessly with nature. The council had arranged for him to stay in a grand, palace-like building reserved for visiting dignitaries. His quarters were luxurious, with plush furniture and windows that offered breathtaking views of the cityscape. But Ethan barely noticed. His mind was focused on the task ahead. He had been summoned to mediate a dispute between two planets, Krylos and Vera, over access to a vital resource called Lumina crystals. These crystals powered everything from starships to medical devices, and both planets claimed ownership of a newly discovered deposit located near their shared border. Claire accompanied him to the meeting as always. She carried a tablet filled with data about the conflict, though Ethan doubted he'd have time to read it all before stepping into the room. They arrived at a circular chamber designed for negotiations, its walls lined with holographic displays showing maps of the contested region. Representatives from Krylos and Vera sat on opposite sides of the table, their expressions tense and unyielding. The tension in the room was so thick Ethan could almost feel it pressing against his chest. Let's begin, said Lyra, who presided over the session alongside her sister Senna. Her voice was calm but firm, cutting through the heavy silence. Ethan Carter has agreed to hear your arguments and propose a solution. Please state your case. The representative from Krylos went first. He was a tall, broad-shouldered humanoid with skin that gleamed like polished bronze. His name was Torin, and he wasted no time laying out his argument. The crystal deposit lies within our territorial boundaries, he declared, pointing to a map displayed above the table. Our scientists discovered it decades ago during exploratory missions. Vera only laid claim after we began mining operations last year. When Torin finished, the Veran representative, a slender, bird-like being named Kiris, took her turn. Her feathers shimmered in shades of blue and green as she spoke. "That land belongs to us," she insisted. "It has been sacred to our people for generations." Krylos ignored ancient treaties when they started extracting resources without permission. Ethan listened carefully, jotting down notes as each side presented their evidence. Claire leaned close to whisper occasional clarifications, helping him make sense of technical terms and historical references. By the end of the presentations, Ethan's head was spinning. Both sides had valid points, backed by centuries of history and legal documentation. How could he possibly choose one over the other? He excused himself to think, retreating to a small antechamber off the main negotiation room. Claire followed, closing the door behind him. "You don't have to decide right away," she reminded him gently. "Take your time." Ethan paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. "There's got to be another way," he muttered. "If I pick one side, the other will never forgive me. And if I split the deposit evenly, neither will be happy because they'll both feel cheated." "What if you focus on what they need instead of where the crystals are?" Claire suggested. "Maybe there's a way to share the benefits without dividing the actual resource." Her words sparked an idea. Ethan stopped pacing and turned to face her. "What if we create a joint operation? Both planets work together to mine the crystals and distribute the profits equally. That way, neither side loses. And they might even build trust along the way." Claire smiled. "That's brilliant. It's not perfect, but it's a start." Reinvigorated, Ethan returned to the negotiation room. The representative from Krylos and Vera watched him warily as he took his seat at the head of the table. Taking a deep breath, Ethan explained his proposal. At first, both sides balked. Torin argued that sharing control would slow production, while Kiris worried about losing oversight of such a sacred resource. But Ethan pressed on, emphasizing the long-term benefits of cooperation over short-term gains. "You've been fighting over this for years," he said, his voice steady despite the knot of nerves in his stomach. "How much longer can you afford to waste time arguing? If you work together, you'll double your output and strengthen your economies. More importantly, you'll set an example for the rest of the galaxy. Isn't that worth trying?" To everyone's surprise, Torin and Kiris exchanged glances. Slowly, reluctantly, they nodded in agreement. The details still needed to be hammered out, but the foundation for peace had been laid. As the meeting concluded, Lyra and Senna approached Ethan, their faces unreadable. "That was unexpected," Lyra said, her tone neutral, "but effective." Senna added, "You've proven yourself capable of thinking beyond traditional solutions. Keep this up, and you may yet succeed." Ethan let out a shaky laugh, relief washing over him. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely out of his depth. Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into learning more about the Council's inner workings. Claire continued to guide him, teaching him how to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that define galactic politics. Together, they attended ceremonies, reviewed trade agreements, and observed debates in the council chambers. Ethan soaked up every bit of information he could, determined to prove that he deserved the trust placed in him. But not everyone was pleased with his presence. Rumors began to circulate among certain factions that Ethan was merely a puppet controlled by the Zinneran princesses. Some accused him of favoring Earth's interests over those of other planets. Others dismissed him outright, claiming that a human could never truly understand the challenges faced by older, more advanced civilizations. One evening, as Ethan walked through the palace gardens with Claire, they overheard whispers from a group of council members. One of them, a feline-like ambassador named Zyron, spoke loudly enough for Ethan to hear. "This is ridiculous," Zyron sneered. "A primitive creature leading the council? It's an insult to our traditions." Ethan stiffened, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Claire placed a hand on his arm, urging him to stay calm. "Don't let them get to you," she whispered. "They're just scared of change." "I'm not here to insult anyone," Ethan replied quietly, though his fists clenched at his sides. "I'm here to help." Despite the criticism, Ethan refused to give up. He threw himself into his duties with renewed determination, attending every meeting, asking endless questions, and listening intently to the concerns of council members. Slowly but surely, he began to earn their respect. Even Zyron softened slightly after witnessing Ethan's efforts to resolve a minor trade dispute between two smaller planets. As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself growing closer to Claire. Their partnership evolved into something deeper, built on mutual trust and admiration. She admired his resilience and willingness to learn, while he appreciated her wisdom and unwavering support. Late at night, after long days of work, they would sit together on a balcony overlooking the city, talking about everything from childhood memories to hopes for the future. "You've come a long way since Montana," Claire said one evening. Smiling softly, Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, well, I didn't exactly plan for any of this. But I guess life has a funny way of surprising you." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "Do you ever miss it? Your old life, I mean." "Sometimes," Ethan admitted. "But then I remember why I'm here. If I can make a difference, even a small one, it'll be worth it." As the stars twinkled above them, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, fraught with challenges he couldn't yet imagine. But for now, surrounded by allies and driven by purpose, he allowed himself to believe that he might actually succeed. Ethan's days on Araxis became a whirlwind of activity. Each morning began with briefings from Claire, who summarized the latest developments and prepared him for the meetings ahead. By now, Ethan had grown accustomed to the strange sights and sounds of the capital planet, the glowing buildings, the hum of alien languages, the constant buzz of activity. Yet no matter how much he adapted, there was always a part of him that felt out of place, like a puzzle piece forced into a picture. It didn't quite fit. Still, he pressed on. The joint mining operation between Krylos and Vera had been a success, setting a precedent for cooperation among rival factions. Word of Ethan's unconventional approach spread quickly through the council, earning him both praise and skepticism. Some members admired his ability to think creatively, while others dismissed him as naive. But Ethan didn't let the criticism deter him. He reminded himself daily that he wasn't here to win popularity contests, he was here to help. One afternoon, Ethan found himself facing another challenge. This time, it involved a planet called Drexer, whose leaders had accused a neighboring species of sabotaging their communication network. The Drexorians were a proud and militaristic race, known for their quick tempers and refusal to back down. Their ambassador, a hulking figure named Thawok, demanded immediate reparations and threatened retaliation if his demands weren't met. The accused species, the aquatic Nylary, denied any wrongdoing. Their representative, a sleek, fish-like being named Maris, argued that the malfunction was likely due to natural causes rather than sabotage. Tensions escalated rapidly during the council session, with Thalok slamming his fist on the table and shouting accusations while Maris remained calm but resolute. Ethan watched the exchange carefully, noting the stark contrast between the two personalities. Thalok's anger was palpable, his voice booming like thunder. Maris, on the other hand, spoke in smooth, melodic tones, her words flowing like water. It was clear that neither side would budge without significant intervention. After listening to both arguments, Ethan requested a recess. In the antechamber, Claire helped him sift through technical reports about the damaged network. "It looks like an equipment failure," she said, pointing to a section of the document. "But the Drexorians are convinced it's sabotage. They've had conflicts with the Nylary before, so they're jumping to conclusions." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "We need proof one way or the other. Otherwise, this could spiral into something worse." With Claire's assistance, Ethan proposed sending a neutral investigative team to assess the damage. Both Thalok and Maris agreed reluctantly, though Thalak made it clear he wouldn't tolerate delays. The investigation revealed that the malfunction had indeed been caused by faulty equipment, not sabotage. Armed with this evidence, Ethan called another meeting. "Let's focus on fixing the problem instead of assigning blame," Ethan suggested, addressing both ambassadors. "If we work together, we can prevent this from happening again, maybe even improve the system so it benefits everyone." Thalak grumbled but eventually conceded, while Maris expressed gratitude for Ethan's fairness. Though the resolution wasn't perfect, it prevented further escalation and reinforced Ethan's reputation as a mediator. Despite these successes, not all of Ethan's efforts went smoothly. As weeks turned into months, cracks began to form in the fragile alliances he'd worked so hard to build. Rumors swirled about a faction within the council plotting against him. Whispers reached his ears warnings that powerful members were unhappy with his leadership style and planned to remove him from power. Ethan tried to ignore the gossip, focusing instead on his duties. But the tension weighed heavily on him. Nights became restless, filled with dreams of failure and betrayal. During the day, he caught glimpses of hostile stares from certain council members, their disdain barely concealed. Even Claire seemed more guarded than usual, her usual optimism fading slightly. Then came the day everything changed. Ethan was summoned to an emergency session of the council. When he arrived, the chamber was eerily quiet. Lyra and Senna stood at the front, their expressions grim. Behind them, holographic screens displayed images of explosions and destruction, a fleet of ships attacking civilian colonies. The attackers bore no insignia, making it impossible to identify them immediately. "This is unacceptable," Lyra announced, her voice sharp with anger. "Such acts of aggression cannot go unanswered. We must act swiftly to protect innocent lives." Senna added, "Intelligence suggests that rogue elements within the council may be responsible. Until we determine the truth, heightened security measures will be implemented." Ethan's stomach churned. He glanced around the room, noticing the subtle shifts in body language among the representatives. Some looked genuinely shocked, while others avoided eye contact altogether. A cold realization settled over him. The rumors of betrayal were true. As the session continued, Ethan struggled to process what was happening. Claire leaned close, whispering urgently, "Be careful, Ethan. Trust no one, not even those who seem supportive. This situation is dangerous." Ethan nodded, though his mind raced with questions. Who could he trust? How far did the conspiracy reach? And most importantly, how could he protect Earth from becoming collateral damage? In the days that followed, paranoia gripped the council. Security checkpoints multiplied throughout the palace, and armed guards patrolled the halls. Ethan and Claire stuck close together, rarely venturing far without an escort. Despite the danger, Ethan refused to let fear dictate his actions. He doubled down on his efforts to unite the council, believing that transparency and cooperation were the only ways to root out the traitors. During a private meeting with Lyra and Senna, Ethan voiced his concerns. "We can't let fear divide us," he said firmly. "If we start turning on each other, the real enemy wins. We need to investigate openly, share information, and hold everyone accountable, including ourselves." Lyra studied him intently, her golden eyes searching his face. "You speak wisely, Ethan Carter, but wisdom alone may not be enough to save us." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the weight of uncertainty. "But I have to try." Senna placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Then we will stand with you for now." Though the princess's support offered some comfort, Ethan knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril. The galaxy teetered on the brink of chaos, and the choices he made next could tip the balance one way or the other. With Claire by his side and determination burning in his heart, Ethan prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For better or worse, he was no longer just a mechanic from Montana, he was a leader, tasked with guiding countless worlds toward peace. The conspiracy unraveled faster than anyone expected. Late one night, Ethan and Claire were reviewing documents in his quarters when an urgent message flashed across the screen of her tablet. It was from a trusted ally within the Council's Intelligence Division, a being named Kale, who had been quietly feeding them information about suspicious activities. The message was brief but alarming. Assassination plot confirmed. Target: Ethan Carter. Claire's face went pale as she read the words aloud. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We need to alert Lyra and Senna," he said, standing up quickly. "No," Claire replied, grabbing his arm to stop him. "If there's a mole in the council, we can't trust anyone, not yet. We have to handle this ourselves." Ethan hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Claire was right. If word got out too soon, it could put them in even greater danger. Together, they devised a plan. They would act as though nothing was wrong while secretly gathering evidence to expose the conspirators. Over the next few days, Ethan played along, attending meetings and making public appearances as usual. But behind the scenes, he and Claire worked tirelessly with Kale to piece together the details of the plot. Through encrypted messages and covert exchanges, they learned that a faction of council members led by Ambassador Zyrin had grown tired of Ethan's leadership. To them, he was a symbol of weakness, an outsider unfit to guide the galaxy. Their plan involved framing him for treason, using forged documents to paint him as the mastermind behind recent attacks on civilian colonies. "They're trying to make you look like the enemy," Claire explained during a late-night strategy session. "Once they discredit you, they'll take control of the council and push their own agenda." Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "They think they can just toss me aside? After everything I've done?" "It's not about what you've done," Claire said firmly. "It's about fear. You represent change, and they don't know how to handle it." Determined to clear his name, Ethan decided to confront Zyrin directly. With Claire by his side, he requested a private meeting under the guise of discussing trade agreements. When Zyrin arrived, her sleek feline features curled into a smug smile. "What is it you want, human?" she purred, settling into a chair. "I know what you're planning," Ethan said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. "And I'm giving you a chance to stop before things go too far." Zyrin's expression darkened. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," Ethan shot back, leaning forward. "You've been spreading lies, forging evidence, and plotting to get rid of me. But if you think I'm going to roll over and let you destroy everything I work for, you're wrong." For a moment, Zyrin looked genuinely surprised. Then, her lips curled into a sneer. "You're braver than I gave you credit for," she admitted. "But bravery won't save you. The council will never believe your word over mine." Before Ethan could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. Red lights flashed, signaling a security breach. Claire grabbed Ethan's arm. "We need to move now." The trio bolted from the room, narrowly avoiding guards who seemed to materialize out of nowhere. It became clear that Zyrin's accomplices had set their plan in motion earlier than anticipated. As they raced through the corridors, Ethan realized this wasn't just about discrediting him anymore. It was about silencing him permanently. With Claire leading the way, they ducked into a maintenance tunnel, slipping past patrols and dodging surveillance drones. Kale met them halfway, guiding them to a hidden chamber deep within the palace. Inside, they found a cache of data drives containing irrefutable proof of Zyrin's treachery communications logs, financial records, and blueprints of the assassination plot. "This is it," Kale said urgently. "Take this to the council chambers. Expose them publicly. It's the only way to end this." Ethan hesitated, glancing at Claire. She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Do it," she urged. "We'll hold them off while you get to safety." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. Armed with the evidence, he made his way to the council chambers, where an emergency session was already underway. Lyra and Senna stood at the front, addressing the assembled representatives. Tension crackled in the air as whispers of chaos spread. When Ethan entered, all eyes turned to him. Ignoring the murmurs, he strode to the center of the room and held up the data drives. These contain proof of a conspiracy against me and against the Council itself, he announced, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Zyron and her allies orchestrated recent attacks and planned to frame me for their crimes. They wanted to seize power by sowing fear and division. Gasps rippled through the chamber as Ethan plugged the drives into the main console. Holographic. Displays sprang to life, showing damning evidence of Zyron's involvement. Her betrayal was undeniable. Lyra stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Is this true, Zyron?" she asked, her voice cold as ice. Zyron, cornered and exposed, tried to deny the accusations, but her protest fell flat. Other council members turned on her, demanding answers. Within moments, she and her co-conspirators were placed under arrest. Their plans dismantled. As order began to restore, Ethan sank into a nearby chair, exhaustion washing over him. Claire joined him shortly after, her face streaked with sweat but triumphant. "You did it," she said softly. "You stopped them." Ethan shook his head. "We stopped them. None of this would have been possible without you." Though the immediate threat had passed, the ordeal left its mark. Trust within the council was fragile, and many questioned whether such betrayals could happen again. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, something remarkable emerged: respect. Even those who had doubted Ethan now acknowledged his courage and integrity. By refusing to retaliate against Zyron and choosing transparency over vengeance, he demonstrated qualities rare in any leader, human or otherwise. In the weeks that followed, Ethan redoubled his efforts to rebuild alliances and strengthen the Council's unity. He pushed for reforms aimed at increasing accountability and reducing corruption. Slowly but surely, the galaxy began to heal. And through it all, Ethan remained steadfast, guided by the belief that fairness and compassion could overcome even the darkest challenges. As he gazed out at the stars from his balcony one evening, Claire joined him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You've come a long way," she said with a smile. "From a mechanic in Montana to a galactic leader. Not bad for someone who never asked for this." Ethan chuckled softly. "Yeah, well, sometimes life gives you choices you didn't expect. All you can do is rise to the occasion." Together, they stood in silence, watching the shimmering expanse of the cosmos stretch endlessly before them. Whatever lay ahead, Ethan knew he wouldn't face it alone. The galaxy had changed, and so had Ethan Carter. Months had passed since the conspiracy against him was exposed, and though scars remained both visible and invisible, the council was stronger than ever. Under his leadership, reforms were implemented to ensure transparency and accountability. Representatives who once viewed him with suspicion now sought his counsel, recognizing the value of his impartiality and compassion. Ethan had proven himself not just as a leader, but as a symbol of hope in a fractured universe. One evening, as Ethan sat in his quarters reviewing reports, there was a knock at the door. It was Lyra and Senna, their elegant robes shimmering softly in the dim light. They entered without ceremony, their expressions warm yet serious. "You've done well, Ethan," Lyra began, her voice gentle. "Better than we could have hoped," Senna nodded. "Your actions have restored faith in the Council's mission. But your journey is far from over." Ethan leaned back in his chair, setting aside the tablet he'd been holding. "What do you mean?" "There is still much work to be done," Lyra explained. "Old wounds run deep, and trust takes time to rebuild. You've laid the foundation for peace, but it will require constant effort to maintain. And you'll need allies," Senna added. "Not just within the Council, but among the people of every planet. They must see you as more than a figurehead. They must believe in your vision." Ethan absorbed their words, feeling both pride and pressure. He knew they were right. Being chosen as king wasn't the end of his story. It was only the beginning. If he wanted to create lasting change, he would need to inspire others to join him. With that goal in mind, Ethan embarked on a new mission: traveling across the galaxy to meet the citizens of member planets. Accompanied by Claire, he visited bustling cities, remote villages, and everything in between. Everywhere they went, Ethan listened to farmers struggling with crop failures, to children dreaming of brighter futures, to elders sharing stories of past conflicts. He made it a point to hear not just the voices of leaders, but also those often overlooked dot in one village on a desert planet called Solara. Ethan met a young girl named Myra. She approached him shyly during a community gathering, clutching a handmade model of a starship. "Do you think I could fly one someday?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan knelt down to her level, smiling warmly. "I don't see why not. The galaxy belongs to everyone, including you. All you need is courage and determination." Myra beamed, her grip tightening on the toy ship. Moments like these reminded Ethan why he was doing this, not for power or recognition, but for people like Myra, whose dreams deserved a chance to flourish. As word of Ethan's travels spread, support for his leadership grew. Citizens from different worlds began reaching out, eager to contribute to the cause of unity. Artisans crafted murals depicting scenes of cooperation. Musicians composed songs celebrating peace. Scientists collaborated on projects aimed at solving shared problems. Slowly, a sense of collective purpose took root. Back on Earth, news of Ethan's success inspired millions. What had once seemed impossible, a human leading an intergalactic council, now felt inevitable. People looked up at the stars with renewed optimism, knowing that one of their own stood among them, shaping the destiny of countless civilizations. But Ethan never forgot where he came from. During a rare visit home to Willow Creek, he walked through the quiet streets, breathing in the familiar scent of pine trees. The townsfolk greeted him warmly, proud of what he'd achieved. Though he no longer lived there, it would always be a part of him. That night, sitting on the hood of his old truck, Ethan reflected on how far he'd come. Claire joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" she said, nodding toward the house behind them. "Being here after all that's happened." "It does," Ethan admitted. "But it's good to remember where I started, keeps me grounded." Claire smiled, leaning against the windshield beside him. "You've changed, Ethan, not just because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you've become. You're still the same guy who fixed tractors in Montana, but now you carry the hopes of entire worlds on your shoulders." Ethan chuckled softly. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility." "You are," Claire said firmly, "because you care. That's what makes you different." Their conversation drifted into silence as they gazed at the stars above. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to dream not of grand achievements or political victories, but of a future where differences didn't divide, where cooperation outweighed conflict, and where every being, no matter how small, had a place in the vast tapestry of existence. When they returned to Araxis, Ethan resumed his duties with renewed energy. He worked tirelessly to strengthen alliances, mediate disputes, and foster collaboration. His efforts weren't perfect. There were setbacks and challenges, but each step forward brought the galaxy closer to lasting harmony. One day, during a formal ceremony honoring his contributions, Lyra and Senna presented Ethan with a gift, a crystal pendant etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the light. "This represents unity," Senna explained. "A reminder of what you've built and what we must continue to protect." Ethan accepted the pendant with gratitude, slipping it around his neck. As he stood before the assembled representatives, he felt a profound sense of purpose. This was his life now, not just as a mechanic or even as a leader, but as a bridge between worlds, guiding fractured societies toward a brighter future. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, Ethan faced it with unwavering resolve. With Claire by his side and the weight of countless dreams resting on his shoulders, he stepped confidently into the unknown, ready to shape a legacy that would endure for generations to come.